Okay, people, so we're going to review the natural history of disease, which is basically how a disease evolves, not who invented it or whatever. Then let's define it as the natural evolution of any given pathological process, illness, disease, what you want to call it, from its starts to its end, and without human intervention. Okay, so no matter what, if a doctor intervenes or not, something will come out. Okay, so it's how the disease evolves. Okay, now, things that can cause a disease are called pathogens or agents. Okay, we already defined pathogen as coming from the root pathos, which means illness, and gen, which means generator. Okay, so an agent is a pathogen or something that causes damage to a host. It has to cause damage to an organism. And there can be different types of these agents or pathogens. They can be biological, bacteria, virus, fungus, plants, invertebrates, vertebrates, whatever. They can be physical, for example, heat, cold, radiation, sound, whatever you want. Chemical, and for example, here we can find toxins, poisons, gases, whatever. Okay, so it's anything that causes damage to a host. Now, we talked about the agent, which is the one that causes damage to the host, but it's important that this all be in the correct environment. For example, if you have a cold, okay, let's say bacteria that causes a cold, that would be the agent, okay, and the host could be any one of us, okay. But what happens if the agent does not have, for example, you know that most colds are transmitted through the direct contact of saliva or any fluid that comes from one person to the next. So let's say that nobody has sneezed on me. I know this sounds disgusting, but it's very clear. If nobody sneezes on me, there's no saliva that contains the agent uh, to infect me as a host. So if you're missing one of these three elements, environment, agent, or host, there cannot be illness, okay? It's only when the three of them get together that you have an illness, okay? Now, let's look at the evolution. I'm leaving some definitions here for you. If you want to stop it, you can read them. Don't worry. We're going to explain them in a minute. Now, any disease has three parts to it. Pre-pathogenic period, which means it's the point where you're healthy, where those three factors that we talked about a minute ago do not interact in such a way that they cause a disease. Okay. Then we have the pathogenic period where these three items interact and cause a disease. And then there's going to be an outcome. Either you can recover from it or you don't recover from it. We're going to look into the specifics in a minute. Okay. So pre-pathogenic. You're always going to have agent, environment, and host interacting. But as long as the three of them are not correct for each other, you will not get an illness. It's only until the three of them act correctly that you get an illness. Okay? Now, even then, when you're sick, when you're infected with something, there's two stages to this that is divided by a clinical horizon. What does this mean, basically? Preclinical means that you're not aware that you're sick yet. You don't have any symptoms yet. So you don't go to the doctor and say, I think I'm going to get a cold. You don't know that. So until this infection here has evolved in such a way that you get symptoms, then you arrive to the clinical stage, which is when you go to the clinic to your doctor. That's why it's called clinical stage. Okay? And out of that, you're going to have some sort of an outcome. We don't know what it is yet. It depends on the disease. So, to sum it up, preclinical, no symptoms. Clinical, you have some sort of manifestation of a symptom. Okay? Now, going into the specifics. Once you're in the preclinical stage, you will eventually, if you cross this horizon, get some symptoms and go into the clinical stage. So, once you get these symptoms, the illness will advance, and you have one of two options. You can go negatively or positively. Let's go for the positive side first. When you get a cold, you convalesce, you feel bad, but you eventually start getting better, and at the end, you recover. Okay? But there are some illnesses in which once you get to this point, the advanced illness, you can never get rid of it. Your body's unable to get rid of it. So sometimes you live for the rest of your life in a chronic disease. Let's say that my cold lasts forever, okay? But if that cold advances even more, it can make me so sick that I can't do things. Maybe I can't run. Maybe I'm even stuck in bed forever. So at that point, it becomes incapacitating. And if it still develops even more, then unfortunately, if my body's unable to resist it, then most likely I will die. Okay? So these are the steps into um, the evolution of a disease. And as you can see, well, the outcome can be recovery, chronic state, incapacitating, or even reach death. So let's look at an example of this. Let's think about HIV. First of all, for HIV, for somebody to get infected with HIV, you need, obviously, the agent. In this case, the agent is HIV, the virus. You need the host, which in this case would be the person. And last but not least, you need the environment. You know that HIV is transmitted through bodily fluids, okay? So you either need blood or other fluids from the body, okay? Let's leave it at blood for the time being. So once these three interact in a way and reach the person, then I go into the preclinical stage. Okay, so unfortunately, people with HIV don't always know at the beginning that they have HIV, so they incur in some risky, let's say, behaviors that can cause this disease to unfortunately spread. It's not until they start getting the first symptoms that they actually find out that they have HIV. Okay, now we all know that this illness advances, and that's eventually when the person knows they get HIV or have HIV actually. And we also unfortunately know that this person will never recover from this, okay? Unfortunately, there's no medicine that eliminates HIV from your system. Now, what we do have is medicine that controls it, so it doesn't spread out through our body. And basically, HIV, remember, the HIV means human immunosuppressant virus, okay? So we can stop the virus from replicating itself but never get rid of it. So it'll stay as a chronic disease. Unfortunately, sometimes our medications that we have do not become enough, or at some point are not enough. And the person, well, gets even sicker, so they become incapacitated. This is a very long and unfortunately um, hard death to deal with. So the person will eventually become incapacitated because actually what this disease does is, since it destroys your immune system, it allows other diseases, even very simple ones, to attack you. So what for us can be a very minor cold can be a very, very serious cold for a person with HIV. And actually at this point, once you reach this, it is now called AIDS. So it's the acquired immunodeficiency um, sickness. Okay, and unfortunately, we also know that once the person is incapacitated, then most likely they will reach death due to this disease. Okay, so this is a very clear example of how we have the evolution of a disease with a very, very specific example. I hope everything was very clear. If not, as always, I'm more than open to solve your doubts. Thank you very much.